This episode of the Golf Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month. Start making smarter bets today. We're also brought to you by Cut. Cut is the peer-to-peer social betting platform that's U.S.-based and available in 40 states. Head to cut.com. That's KUTT.com. Use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. And we're also brought to you by the Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon. The guys just dropped their bonus behind-the-scenes episode of Sean Green winning $200,000 in DraftKings. Plus, this week's pick and prize is free. $250 for a $250 Super Bowl square. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon to join today. All right, DGens, good morning. How are you? Hope you have a nice cup of coffee for this, for me at least, chilly Sunday morning. For you, maybe not so much, but it's Steve Schirmer here with the Waste Management Phoenix Open preview this year. We got a couple tournaments going on right now. Like I predicted, I think before the tournament, I don't think we're going to see any PGA Tour golf today. We're going to get 65, 70 mile per hour winds. A lot of rain. They're going to push into Monday, but I also saw a scenario where if the course is deemed unplayable on Monday and they can't get it ready before, half the field actually completes the round on Monday, they are going to actually revert back to the 54-hole leaderboard, which I am sure is going to make everyone very happy. If you had an outright on Oberg or JT or Detry and, maybe they take the lead on Monday, but half the field doesn't finish, they're going to just scrap the round entirely and declare Wyndham Clark the winner. So I'm sure that's going to go awesome on Golf Gambling Twitter. I'm glad that I'll be on the sidelines for that. But hey, that's rub of the green there is what it is. You also got the LIV event going on right now. That actually will play. I mean, I think they're going to catch a break to the fact that, you got a decent leaderboard. Neiman is leading. I bet him. Hopefully he hangs on. You got Rahm chasing him. You got DJ kind of up there in the mix. I mean, they're pretty far back, but listen, the stage is clear for them. So if you want to tune into that, you go to CW. You can see them play Michael. Yesterday actually played kind of entertaining. It was pretty windy. Played a little difficult. And, it was difficult kind of for me, at least, watching it yesterday. I was trying to go back and forth. Obviously, I got bets on both. But, you had Pebble Beach that, okay leaderboard. Not a ton of energy. I think for me, the curtain's been pulled behind with Oz, and I've seen kind of what this tournament is now, what this tour is, and it's not quite as meaningful what it was. Excuse me. But then you also have LIV, which has not a lot of energy. But I want to talk about this more with Jeff Feinberg, I think, on Tuesday. He's, I think maybe a amenable audience to his take, but there's been some pushback about why LIV is starting to go after the signature events. And I think I finally understood why yesterday that they're on is because I think watching golf, for us 5% of people who want to devote time to the weekend, you plan out your schedule, you get in a mindset of you're going to watch golf. And I think a lot of people, the casuals, kind of get in that mindset too. What the problem with LIV was, obviously no one was watching. You can debate about the fact of whether it's meaningful or not. I'm kind of on the side of it's not meaningful, but if you're not actually getting an audience who has a mindset of, I'm going to watch golf this week, well, of course they're not going to watch. It doesn't matter at that point. They're not even going to watch the John Deere. They're just not checked in at that point. But, I mean, if no one was watching on the off weeks anyways, at least you have a larger audience that is maybe amenable to watching golf on a weekend. You can just flip back and forth. Maybe they can get lucky with a really good leaderboard at the top and maybe a dud leaderboard like what happened at Farmers Insurance Open last week. It's a new strategy for them to try and get some eyeballs. We'll see if it works. We'll see what the ratings hold. I don't expect them to actually draw a measurable Nielsen rating, but it's not great for golf fans right now. I wish I was watching both and just wishing they both were all just playing under one roof, but that is those tournaments. If you're sweating bets right now, good luck with you. We are moving on to the WM Phoenix Open. This is the People's Open. This is the only event on the PGA Tour that can actually generate organic mainstream buzz on its own. They try and do that with the Players Championship. I don't think it's all that successful, but this is the one that makes Sports Center. This is the one where they get all different Twitter streams where I think PointsBet did a stream on its own, like a gambling one on its own. I know there's other ones that are going to have different variety of guests doing play-by-play. This is one they pull up all the stops for, and there's a good reason for it. Obviously, this is Super Bowl weekend. This is degenerate weekend. This is debauchery weekend. Eat whatever you want, go whatever you want, bet on whatever you want. And I think this tournament has leaned into the fan aspect great with this. Obviously, you have the 16th green and, the atmosphere behind that. We'll go over that in a little bit. But, this is a fun event. Unfortunately, it's not a signature event anymore. Last year at the Alve Stats, so everybody was there. This was, I think, the most fun tournament of the year. And it was, I think, the high point of the signature events all year long, where you had Scottsdale, you had the best field in golf, nothing opposing to it, lead up Super Bowl, good tournament too. Helped that I had Scotty Scheffler, but this year it doesn't have that. It's sandwiched between two signature events. Obviously, everybody's going to go playing at Pebble Beach at least till Monday. And then you got Riviera next week. So the field took a ding, but like I mentioned, I don't think this tournament needs signature status. It has its own identity. It has its own brand. People are going to tune in anyways. You're going to be blocking off your day on Super Bowl Sunday, cooking meals, drinking beer. You're going to throw on golf. It's going to be a good time. Now, you got another live event next week going opposed to it. We'll see how they do with that. But the field took a big of a ding this week, but it's still pretty good. There's a couple good players. Highlighting the field this week is two-time defending champion Scotty Scheffler. If you were watching yesterday, he had kind of a weird day. I remember at Oak Hill here for the PGA, he was leading him for 54 holes, and it started to rain a lot. And he just was playing like garbage all day. And it was because he couldn't get footing on the tee box. His feet kept slipping. And I noticed the same thing happening yesterday. Like right from the jump, his feet were slipping. Obviously, he slides his feet. He has a little different, unorthodox swing. But he's got to fix that footwear issue, because he was absolutely all over the map with the driver yesterday, which is uncharacteristic for him because he's one of the best drivers on the PGA Tour. So I don't know what happened. Hopefully that's not an issue going forward for him, but this is a great golf course for him. Obviously his putting woes have been well chronicled, but on these types of surfaces that we'll get into in a little bit, especially on, this particular surface too, he's putt very well here. And that's why he's the two-time defending champion. There's also another reason why I want to go over why he's successful here and why I think there's a certain type that's successful here that we'll go over when we dive into Google Earth. But we also have Victor Hovland in the field next week at Phoenix. He actually hasn't been all that good here for whatever reason. I don't particularly see a reason why he wouldn't be good here. It's a very driver-heavy golf course. It's a golf course that can definitely penalize you if you're spraying it all over the place, because the numerous penalty areas and trouble you can get into. This should be a good golf course for him. For whatever reason, he has not been very good here. I don't know particularly why. And we'll get into the Google Earth reasons. With his shot shape, he should be much better here. You got Xander, who's probably should have won a couple of these events. I think I had a bet on him back in 2020, the year Webb Simpson won. It was set up perfect for Xander. He was a couple back. He was chasing. I liked in that position. He was terrible on Sunday, but he's always been very good here for obvious reasons that we'll go for. And then you also have Justin Thomas, who's playing very well. This week I got a bet on him for, I think, a positional that I added a couple days ago. We'll be sweating that for Pebble Beach. Yeah, Max Homa, who's been very disappointing at Pebble Beach so far. Let's see if we can bounce back here. Jordan Spieth, Sung J M, Sam Burns are playing really good golf lately. JT Post and Wyndham Clark. It kind of falls off after that, but top of the board there, a lot of really good names. A lot of names are going to hold the attention of the mainstream viewer. A lot of names that maybe will get in the mix and create kind of an entertaining Sunday. I know the executives of NBC this year, because CBS has the Super Bowl, which is probably going to be a downgrade in your coverage, but they're definitely hoping that a couple of those guys are in the mix. Otherwise, you'll get a Farmers situation where ratings end up being down 40% year over year because the final round, no one really cares. But we'll see what happens. Why don't we take our first break, and then we will dive into Google Earth. I'll show you TPC Scottsdale. I'll show you what's good about it. I'll show you what's not good about it. I'll describe a little more about why I think looking hole to hole favors a certain type of shot shape. And we'll go from there. All right. We are brought to you by the SGP Patreon. So the guys just dropped this month's bonus episode, behind the scenes breakdown of Sean's $200,000 win, where he will talk about how great he is that he had Tariq Cohen in his lineup, and how I think, I can't remember what the Colts quarterback name was, but whatever defensive special teams team he picked that week, I think they had like 3 defensive touchdowns. So that was quite a huge win, a very hallmark moment for the podcast. And if you want to listen to the blow-by-blow breakdown of exactly how Sean won $200,000 that week, go to Patreon. They're also running their Patreon pick'em prize. It's a free $250 square for anyone who's in the Patreon. Plus, you have access to all the pick sheets and exclusive channel on Discord. So head over to sportsgamingpodcast.com/Patreon and sign up today. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long. You got NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, college football wins in season, and golf as well. There's a lot of golf options. They actually expanded the menu this week for different types of things you can make picks for. Up until this point, I've been picking a lot of variable scoring lines that they have. Probably tomorrow, when I go in and do my underdog lineup, I'm probably going to pick higher on stuff, higher round scores, lower on birdies, higher on bogeys. That's probably the direction you want to go to for the final round of the 18 Public Pro-Am when you use Underdog. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash over an Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with the promo code GOLFSGPN, that's our own personal promo code that you can use to go play golf on Underdog. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code GOLFSGPN. Underdog Fantasy, promo code GOLFSGPN. All right, let's pull up Google Earth here. Let's zoom out here. So this is, I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat. I got to take a drink here. Okay. Sorry, maybe I can have Cam edit this in post. But this is TPC Scottsdale. This is a Tom Weisskopf design. He designed this with Jay Morris in 1986. Excuse me. It underwent a renovation in 2014 to kind of toughen it up. But this is definitely one of the more popular golf courses on PGA Tour. It's definitely one of the more popular golf courses that people play just in general. I think there's 43,000 rounds a year here at TPC Scottsdale. There's actually another golf course across the way too. This is the other golf course. I think there's like 60,000 rounds here. But, this is the canvas that we're going to be working with this week. And, for the most part, the TPC Scottsdale, the front 9, very forgettable. But there is a couple things I want to point out with Scottsdale. So opening hole here, what I noticed going over the holes, because I'm doing more of a visual aspect, I want to show you more of the golf course with these previews this year, is that I noticed that there definitely seems to be a fade bias with tee shots and approach shots based on, where hazards are, where you want to start the ball and fade it back, and also how the greens are kind of angled in relation to the fairway. And the first hole is definitely a good example of that. So, right off the tee here, bunker about 292 all the way out here. Let me zoom in. And the optimal tee shot would be start the ball right at the bunker, fade it back into the middle of the fairway. And then once you do that, if you're in the fairway, you got about, a short iron hand. This green promotes a fade for most pin placements. It's angled from about, left to right here, angled a little bit away from the fairway here. Most pin positions can be accessed with a fade. That's pretty good for a guy who likes to have that type of shot shape. Go over to number 2 here. Not necessarily as much off the tee here, but again, with how the green is angled, we'll zoom here. Again, this is a green that promotes a left to right shot with your irons. So if you're comfortable hitting those types of shots, this green right here is perfect. Start it on the left side, peel it back into, especially with these back right pin locations here, that can work here. And then the par 5 third, once again, favors a fade. Start the ball out at this bunker right over here, peel it back to the fairway, and then this green is set out, past a little like a waist area here. It's kind of sitting on its own, but a nice left to right shot with your fairway metal into this green here will work perfectly. Now, unfortunately, with these fairway metals, a lot of these pros have trouble turning it, hitting it left to right. But if you are somebody that is very comfortable doing that, that works for you. But overall, though, I think there's a reason why you don't really know much about Scottsdale from the front 9. This is one of the more mainstream golf courses, and everyone knows the back 9 for obvious reasons I'll get to. But front 9, relatively, I think, forgettable. You just have kind of an ordinary par 3, 183 yards here for the 4th. Everything is very right out in front of the player on most of the opening 9 here. Everything's pretty dead straight right in front of you. Just avoid the bunker, maybe start that way, work it back. Not a ton of, I would say, interesting holes on the front end here. Here's the 6th green. You got a lot of bunkers you got to contend with, but nothing too spectacular. But the back 9 is definitely, and I want to just get to that. The back 9 is definitely why this golf course is, I wouldn't call it architecturally great if you're into that, but it creates a lot of drama. And there's a lot of opportunities on the back 9 to make your round or break your round. And it kind of starts off right here on the first 9 here. So this is this is the 10th hole, a sharp dog leg left or dog leg right hole, almost 90 degrees. You see a lot of guys try and carry the bunker here. And if they do that, they can be very successful. They shove basically a wedge in. But, you also see some guys, maybe they, pull it a little bit into the rough here. It sets up a lot longer approach shot into the green. These greens can play kind of firm too. These bunkers are also very small here. So, especially when the pin is over on the right side right here, trying to get up. And if you land this bunker here, it's going to be tough to get up and down. The 11th hole, though, this is, I think, if you are somebody who likes to watch car crashes, maybe you're a NASCAR fan, loves Talladega, loves Daytona, this hole is for you. This fairway is borderline unfair, especially when it's playing very firm. So if you have a tee shot that starts, middle to left off the tee here, it's probably bouncing in the water here because of how firm the fairways are. The fairway kind of slopes a little bit towards the water here. And that's why you see guys just hilariously bail outright, because if you get the ball going, once it hits the ground, because it's so firm at this golf course, sometimes if there's not a lot of rain, balls are just going to go right into the water. So I think if you were going to play this golf course, if you're a pro, I would definitely want to start off on the front 9. It's definitely more benign, because first 3 holes, and I'll get to the next hole, first 3 holes, you can really put yourself behind the 8 ball. Either if you hit a bad drive on 10, you don't carry the corner there, you maybe push it way left, you hit it in the water on 11. And then, even on the approach shot too, you can see guys hitting the water there. And then number 12, if you go deep here, or you maybe wipe it a little right, go a little deep, that's also going to find water as well. And I think there's not a lot of rough here. If you go long, it's going to run to the water. You can get off to a really horrible start at this golf course with the first 3 holes. So if you're somebody who's maybe a slow starter, don't draw a tee time that has, where you start on the back. Let's go over to the 15th. So this is where the round really ramps up. And everybody, I think, knows this closing stretch, because there's been a lot of really dramatic moments in this tournament with these first, next couple holes. Now, the 15th hole here, you got an island green par 5. You got water all the way down the left. Again, you see guys just kind of hilariously bail out to the right here. But for the most part, we'll talk about the length of the rough. It's not all that penal. It's not all that thick. Guys can generally get it to the green unless they hit just a really bad approach shot. Most guys kind of try and just bail out in this bunker here. It's relatively easy up and down based on where the pin is. But again, there's a lot of water here, a lot of opportunities for guys to really screw up. I remember, I think in 2020, Webb Simpson was neck and neck with Tony Finau, who I bet that year, and he hit it in the water on 15. It looked like he was done. And then Webb Simpson ended up birdieing 16, 17, 18 to force a playoff. And he ended up winning a playoff, and I was very sad leading up into the Super Bowl. But, you also get, you start hearing the buzz of the crowd as well with the 16th. You start feeling it a little bit if you're in contention. You know that the 16th has a lot of pressure behind it. You have to birdie the par 5s as well. You have to score on these. There's a lot of pressure to get a birdie here before you go to the closing stretch. Then you get to the 16th. Everyone knows it. The Google Earth here, though, really doesn't do it justice. It shows you what this looks like 352 days of the year when there's no grandstands around it. It's a very ordinary 2-tiered green par 3. that's about 150 yards. You can actually move with the tee box to be about a wedge, but maybe I can go back in time where we see the stands here. Where is it? Well, they're constructing it. Here we go. Kind of grainy. This is why this hole is great. It's not the greatest par 3, as some people try to argue with me in golf, but everyone knows it. And listen, I'm somebody who doesn't really love a lot of crowd noise. I think there's a lot of just, look at me stuff with people who shout things. But this is iconic, this hole, where you have guys just going wild, party atmosphere. It's nice to have it once in a while. This is nice. It can be very nerve wracking. You've seen guys shank it off of the grandstands over on the right here. I think Ian Poulter famously did that here. It's good. But for me personally, if I was ever going to go to this tournament, I probably would camp out on the 17th here. Let's get rid of this grainy video here. This is a hole that I think is very intriguing. It is the drivable par 4 17th. And I can think of a lot of pivotal moments at this tournament where the leaderboard flipped on this hole, mostly because of car crashes. But I remember, I think maybe 2015, 2016, Ricky Fowler had a lead. He ended up pulling, I think, 3 wood down the stretch here, ends up hitting the downslope here and runs all the way through the green into the water. And he ends up, I think, bogeying the hole, ends up in a playoff with Hideki Matsuyama, ends up putting it again in the water in the playoff, ends up losing. 2019, the year that Ricky actually ended up winning, he probably should have choked it away, but he ended up winning. Brandon Grace was neck and neck with him, and he ended up duck hooking it into the water over here. The year Brooks Koepka won, 2021, he hit a shot down to this collection area over here, ends up getting chipping in for birdie to steal that tournament. So, and then a couple years ago, see Tagala nursing, I think either a tie for the lead or a lead, ends up duck hooking it into the water here. Or he ends up hitting a pretty good drive, but it just leaks into the water here. This is a very dramatic hole. This is definitely one of my favorite holes on the PGA Tour, not necessarily because of its composition, but just because of the variance that this can create. You can make a tournament, you can break a tournament, you can get eagle here, you can get double bogey here. And this is definitely one of the reasons why this tournament is so great down the stretches, because I think this hole in particular is one of the best closing holes on the PGA Tour just because of all the drama that it brings here. And then the 18th hole, it's okay. It's a little gimmicky. You got these church pew bunkers over here that aren't really in play anymore for these guys. They hit it so long, and with the altitude, they kind of blast it way over it. I think a couple years ago, maybe Fowler was in one of these church pews. This is basically thick fescue. It took a little bit to get up and down there, but most guys take pretty much all these bunkers out of play, sets up a short iron into the green. But, again, this is another opportunity to get a birdie on the hole. I know Webb Simpson birdied this hole back in 2020 in order to get into a playoff and steal one from Tony Finau. Overall, though, look, high level, as far as this golf course, fantastic closing stretch of holes where this tournament always seems like it delivers down the stretch. It's why this tournament is very popular. It's why this tournament is one of the best on the PGA Tour. Between the party raucous atmosphere on the 16th hole to holes, especially on the back nine that I showed you, a lot of opportunity for just variance at this place. And that's what makes tournaments great and dramatic. And it needs more types of tournaments. Like the PGA Tour needs ways to generate juice and buzz. And one of the ways is to have a golf course that can actually generate a lot of drama on its own based on how the holes are and promoting high variance scores where things can kind of just flip at the end. So hopefully if you're, something like that happens again this year, you're on the right side of it. If you're on the wrong side of it, that's just golf. So why don't we take another break and then we will get into the nitty gritty, the stats of this golf course, what works, what doesn't, some history behind it, and then maybe what I'm looking for for this tournament this year. All right, let's talk to you about Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Peer-to-peer social betting is a new and better way to bet. Bet directly against your friends or other users on sports, politics, pop culture, and other events with verifiable outcomes, plus tons of fun social features that give the feel of betting social networks. Cut offers lower VIG and fully customizable odds. You can create your own bets. Cut handles the payment side of things, so you never have to chase down anyone for money. And it's got social features like group chats, betting leaderboards, head-to-head history, user profiles, fan groups, and more. It also gives you rewards. Every time you bet on Cut, you get cash back, so you can get more money into your account and bet your friends more and more. So Cut also allows you to list almost any kind of bet. It's perfect for getting action on any type of fun Super Bowl prop bet that might not be available for you. So Cut is the peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Head to cut.com, that's KUTT.com, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger and bet smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets' revolutionary parlay optimizer tool. Get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. So stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, we got a couple comments in the stream here. Tomcat, yeah, you're welcome. Always happy to drop knowledge for you guys. I'm assuming you're with your comment about it rolls off the right shelf there. I'm assuming that probably is number 12. Yeah. If you hit it a little bit far right, it's going to roll right into the water there on that par 3. Again, another hole that just creates a lot of variance. And yeah, this is definitely one of the more unique tournament setups on the PGA Tour, a league that desperately needs positive mainstream mojo and organic energy that it just cannot create on its own. All right. Let's get rid of that and let's pull up GCSAA. This is actually last year's tournament fact sheet, but I don't expect any changes. There's one thing I got reminded of that was a change last year that actually changed a little bit how this tournament played that we'll go over in just a little bit. But like I mentioned, this is at TPC Scottsdale at the stadium course. It was built excuse me, in 1986 by Tom Weiskopf and Jay Morris. Tom Weiskopf also did TPC Craig Ranch, which is not as successful as this golf course. He also did work at the Olympic Club, which is going to host the PGA Championship, I think, in 2029. Although I think Gil Hanse might have went in there and maybe undid some of his work. But in 2014, Tom Weiskopf also did another renovation to, I think, add some more difficulty, especially I think around the green at this place that, makes it a little more entertaining than what it was. Average green size, 7,069 square feet. That is larger than PGA Tour average. Last couple of weeks we've been dealing with the municipal greens at Torrey Pines that were about 5,000 square feet. We're dealing with the tiny, desperately needs a renovation greens at the Pebble Beach that are less than 3,500 square feet. These are big greens, a lot of real estate to work with. A lot of opportunity to, go pin hunting because there are generous areas, but also, ways if you are in trouble, you can bail out by just hitting the middle of the green, getting with your 2-putt and rolling along. Let's go with the agronomy though. So once again, like we did with Amex, this is an overseeded golf course. Naturally, when it's warmer weather, this is Bermuda base. However, it's cold this time of year, and we're actually going to go over the weather report. It's going to be pretty cold next week. And what happens when you have a Bermuda golf course that is cold, Bermuda goes dormant, turns brown. And especially with this type of tournament where it's waste management, their logo is green. There's a lot of recycling initiatives there. They want this thing to be as green and pop as possible. So not only do they apply on the greens here a Poa trivialis overseed, which is your typical overseeded grass that people prefer when they overseeding. They also add ryegrass to it, which just gives it that really deep green look. And I think it's more aesthetic, but it also makes the greens roll really good here. We'll go over some putting stats, but guys can make a lot of putts here because unlike what we saw at the POA a couple weeks ago, or the last couple weeks, these balls were really good. You get your line, you get your speed, the ball's going to go in. There's no luck box of hitting a POA butt or anything here. You get rolling with a putter at this golf course. You are comfortable on putting these greens. You can make a lot of putts. Collars and approaches, again, you got a ryegrass, bentgrass, POA, trivialis mix there again to make it that really deep green, the kind of what they're looking for. Excuse me, the fairways, perennial, ryegrass, fine fescue, overseed. The rough here. So again, overseeded rough, ryegrass and fine fescue. A little slight change, or not a slight change. I don't know if it's the same this year, but I remember last year I noticed that typically the rough here was about 2.5 inches. And for whatever reason, they cut it down to only 2 inches. It could have been weather related. I think actually it was pretty cold, and I think they had maybe a wet winter leading in. Might have affected how the overseed came in. So maybe they chose to only have it 2 inches. But it also could have been because it was such a star-studded field with a lot of really good drivers. I thought it was a theory that maybe they wanted to make the rough not all that deep to kind of allow guys to kind of blast it everywhere, to give the guys who are better drivers, who are usually the better players in the PGA Tour, more of an opportunity to rise up the leaderboard. And we kind of saw that happen. But it also made playing from the rough off the tee, if you were in the rough off the tee, one of the least penal places on the PGA Tour that we'll go over in a little bit. But yeah, that's the grind. Again, very important to understand that while this is a Bermuda golf course, most years this is overseeded. It makes it a little different. I'll have in my column the golf courses that are overseeded. Just top of mind, though, the only other golf course I know that's overseeded that also has this ryegrass in it is TPC Sawgrass. Again, looking for this deep emerald green look because the PGA Tour is so sensitive to appearances and how it looks. And lo and behold, Scotty Scheffler won the Players last year. And he put really well there. Maybe there's something to that. Let's go over the course stats. So let me zoom in a little bit too. I know this is kind of small. Okay, there we go. So these are their rankings from with DataGolf. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of it. If you are on the fence about getting their, premium package or getting stuff behind the paywall, all this stuff I'm showing you right here, I believe is not behind a paywall. But if you are somebody who is on the fence, sign up. It's worth it. This is free advertising. Not paying me to say this. I am a huge proponent. It is tremendously helpful. And they have a lot of tremendously helpful stuff like this stuff. So what this measures here is basically the types of difficulty in the approach shots. Now, there's some 85 golf courses listed in their database since 2015. So in general, off the tee and with putting, fairly easy conditions. And just like the type of golf course it is, fairly easy to do at this golf course, with a couple caveats that I'll get to with the driving in a little bit. Where the difficulty seems to be at TPC Scottsdale is around the green with their approach play. And I think it's a little bit weather dependent too. I remember last year it was very cold and windy in the first couple rounds there. I think that's probably why last year was one of the toughest golf courses to hit approach shots on the PGA Tour, just because of those conditions. But then you get some other years, I think 2021, where it was just dome conditions. I don't think it played as firm as other years. Fairly easy approach shots. So the weather might be a little bit of a factor as far as how difficult it is to hit your approach shots, how difficult it isn't. Around the green, that's usually pretty consistently one of the tougher ones on the PGA Tour. There's a lot of tight lies around the green. Obviously, when you're tighten off of tight ryegrass, similar to like Augusta National, it's the same grass as what you're, chipping off of from those tight fairway lies there. Some of that grass can be kind of sticky. You can stick the club into it and, maybe you don't get quite as good contact with the ball, chipping off tight lies there. The greens are also big. So if you miss in the wrong spot, there's a lot of real estate you got to navigate to get to the hole. The greens can play kind of firm as well. So if you're someone who might be struggling with your around the green game, this might not be a very good golf course for you, especially if you're not hitting a lot of greens. But let's go over everything in each category. I'll point out some pertinent things. Let's start with driving first, and let's actually switch to values here. So this golf course consistently has one of the higher driving yardages on the PGA Tour, and it's primarily because you basically can hit driver on all holes. There's, unlike at Pebble Beach that we saw last week, a lot of forced layups here. This way you pull driver everywhere, and usually it plays pretty firm too. You have the altitude as well. I think it's at like 2,200 feet elevation. Most guys are able to hit it a very long ways here. Even your Billy Horschels or Alex Norins or Denny McCarthy, especially with the firm conditions, the altitude, you hit the fairway, ball's going to roll. So that's why you see a lot of really big driving distances here. Not very high driving accuracy rates here. Only historically about 56%. I think the PGA Tour is like 60% or so. So, not very easy to hit fairways, but that's mostly because of, there's a lot of room off the tee, but I think it's because of the firm conditions and because the ball is going farther, there's more opportunity that if you're a little bit offline, it's going to land the rough there, or it's going to bound into the rough based on the firm conditions. But as far as if it's actually penal to miss a fairway here, these numbers don't really mean anything to you. Let's go to the rankings here. Overall, it's about, middle of the road. To miss a fairway here, the difference in score between if you're in the fairway and if you weren't, it's about PGA Tour average. It's about like a 0.35 stroke difference per hole. Now, the rough here, not a lot of difference at all between your score if you've hit an approach shot out of the rough here and if you're in the fairway. And we noticed here, it was one of the bottom 5 last year. If you were hitting out of the rough, your approach shots out of the rough into the green as far as your score on the hole, I think that's because of the lower rough. I think that was a direct correlation there. Your non-rough penalty, that's like your fairway bunkers, your, like your waist areas, if you're really offline, that's one of the lower penalties as well, because it's kind of a luck box at that point. We saw a couple of years ago with Jordan Spieth, he was blasting it way into the desert, but he was avoiding the cactus bushes, he was avoiding the boulders. And if you can do that, you have a pretty clean lie. You can get ball first contact, it's just kind of sitting there on, some pebbles and rocks is okay. But this penalty fraction here, this is what you want to keep in mind. We kind of looked at a little bit with the Google Earth stuff. One of the highest rates in penalties incurred off the tee for missed fairways. And obviously, I think a lot of that has to do with hole number 11, where if you have the ball just starting a little far left, it's going to roll right in. You also have the opportunity too, that if you're way offline, if you go into the desert, sure, you could be okay in some places, but there's cactus bushes, there's, some rocks and boulders. You can definitely incur a penalty just by an unplayable lie there. It's not stroke and distance, but, you're dropping for your third at that point. So that is why, yes, there is opportunities where you can get away with it if you are spraying it, but you definitely can get punished if you miss in the wrong points. And that is indicative with how high a penalties, how the percentage of tee shots that incur a penalty at this golf course. Let's go to approach shots. So 65% green regulation rate, about PGA Tour average here. Again, I think it depends basically on the weather. Last year, really cold and windy conditions in the first couple of rounds, a lot lower green regulation rates. I think the greens are playing pretty firm too. But before that, 69% in 2022, 71% in 2021, a little easier scoring conditions overall. That'll show in a little bit. If it's dome golf, if maybe they get a little bit of rain before that, maybe the greens are a little more receptive. They are bigger as well. If there's not really a lot of wind or elements these guys got to deal with, they can hit a lot of greens at a fairly high rate. But last year, though, if it was cold and windy, these guys are having a little trouble there. As far as the difficulty of approach shots here, let's go back to the rankings. Above average difficulty of all golf courses since 2015. It's slightly above average. Last year, you saw that all approach shots were one of the most difficult ones on the PGA Tour. That is completely weather related there. But then you get to 2021, pretty easy conditions to hit approach shots because it's just dome golf, no wind. You saw guys really go flag hunting in that particular year. So yeah, the weather definitely can play a bit of a part in it. Around the green, I mentioned the tight lies around the fairway. One of the toughest places to try and get up and down from the fairway is at TPC Scottsdale. Again, there's a lot of collection areas. There are, there are big greens that you got to maybe, get, navigate a lot of real estate to get to the pin. If these greens are playing firm as well, you got to have really good spin control. So chipping off the tight lies into some of these greens can be fairly difficult, as evidenced by the scoring there. The rough, again, not very penal, just like with the fairway. I don't think there's a ton of rough around the greens at TPC Scottsdale. Maybe by, maybe the ends of some collection areas, but if you're in the rough, that's actually probably the most ideal place. The bunkers are actually fairly tough to get up and down from as well. Again, if you miss the wrong spot, there's a lot of real estate you got to navigate. You got to have really good spin control. It can be fairly difficult conditions around the green here at TPC Scottsdale. And then putting, though, like I mentioned, with the ryegrass overseed in with the Poa-tribios, these greens roll really good. These are one of the easiest greens to make putts on the PGA Tour. Basically, if you are a really good putter here and you have confidence with the flat stick, you make a lot of putts under 5 feet, make a lot of putts between 5 and 15 feet. You can definitely go low here if you get it going. I guess, hopefully what I showed you with this golf course is if you're hitting it good, you can definitely go low here. But if you're booning it around, there's a lot of opportunity to really put up high numbers. Very high variance golf course here. But definitely with putting, if you're hitting it really good, you have every opportunity in the world to make a lot of putts. Let's go over historical scoring and just who's won here. So last year, Scotty Scheffler won it 19 under. He was going neck and neck with Nick Taylor down the stretch. I was definitely sweating at that point, thinking, maybe single bulleting Scotty wasn't going to work out for me. It did. But it's first couple of rounds here. I got highlight here. Plus 1.4 over par. It was really cold and windy the first round here. Guys are really struggling. I remember I think I had a position on Morikawa because I just thought he was a perfect thing for this. But the wind kicked up. He really struggled. I think he ended up missing the cut here. But over the weekend, though, it kind of settled into its average. Usually the average score, if it's dome conditions, no wind adversity, usually around a shot under par, maybe a stroke, shade under that. Maybe a lot of guys are kind of hitting the water, incurring penalties. Maybe it pushes it lower there. But, not the toughest of golf courses if you get it going, but, not the easiest either. Definitely, this 11th hole you see, the average score was 0.56 over par, 21 bogeys, 8 doubles in the final round there, mostly because the guys hit in the water. What was it in the first round, actually? Yeah, actually, it wasn't all that much, but there were still 50 bogeys to be had in the first round there on number 11 where you get hit in the water. But going back through the years, 2022 here, Scotty Scheffler again won. He won a playoff over Patrick Cantlay. Not very difficult scoring conditions. I think the first round bled into Friday. Guys are finished up in some colder weather. Maybe that's what pushed down the average score here, but it kind of settled in the rest of the tournament to about what it was. 0.9 under par in round 2, stroke under par in round 3, 0.8 under par in round 4. It was firm, but not a lot of wind, not a lot of adversity. You can go, guys can shoot under par there. 2021, I think this was one of the easier ones of the last couple of years. Average score minus 1.7 under par. You saw guys just in round 2 to 4 just really eat this place up. Average score in round 4 in 2021 was -2. I remember because I bet Brooks mid-tournament because everyone seemed like they didn't want to win this thing. And coming on the back 9, Brooks, I think, was like hanging 18-1 live. And I just bet that because I was like, well, he's the only one who seems like he's actually has it today. But everybody was kind of eating up that golf course that day, -2 under par there. So, and that was dome conditions. So the scoring can definitely be dictated based on the weather. If it's cold, windy, maybe some rain too, maybe those house cats kind of struggle a little bit that we talked about at Pebble Beach last week. That can affect scores. If it's dome conditions, these guys can go low. And the weather, though, it's going to be a continuation. These guys are going to, if you're playing Pebble Beach, they're going to have to make sure they pack those parkas and rain gear for Scottsdale because it's going to be cold. They're going to get some rain before the tournament. They're going to get some rain during the tournament. So Thursday looks like some rain in the morning, which is unusual, I think, for Scottsdale. This is in the desert. Maybe some wind up in the afternoon here. Only a high of 54. That's not very dome conditions here. Friday, maybe a little bit of wind, but not all severe. But again, only high of 59. It's going to be relatively cold. Saturday, Sunday, at least for, not any rain, not a lot of wind. But again, just a lot of cold. So I'm looking at this and, typically in like TPC Scottsdale weather, 70 degrees, altitude, no wind, anything like that. A lot of guys can just get it out there with the driver there. Maybe with the colder conditions, it might lengthen a little bit. The fact that it's going to get a lot of rain leading to the tournament as well. Maybe the ball doesn't roll out as much. Maybe this year might favor a little more longer hitters than prior years. Maybe if the fairways are running a little softer, maybe balls won't run into the water on 11 this year. Maybe they'll play a little more generous this year than they have. So that's something to watch. Obviously, the weather can change very, drastically through the week. As far as a wave split right now, I would probably say they're probably saying with this wind is probably related to the rain. So when it comes through, I guess I would probably shade Thursday afternoon, Friday morning for the wave splits. But we're going to need to see a firmer weather report before we can really make that conclusion. Let's talk about course fit here. Oh no, my Wi-Fi is going. Well, I'm going to have to, I guess, just manually explain it to you guys here. But let's pull up Scottsdale here. So this has a higher correlation of guys who drive it really good to success at this tournament. This graph here is a predictive skill set chart. There we go. My internet's working now. It's a predictive skill set chart. This basically shows what types of guys you want to look for at the PGA Tour or before a golf course. And there's a higher correlation of guys who are longer and guys who are more accurate with the driver who do very well here. Makes a lot of sense from what I talked about. This is a golf course that can promote big driving distances here with the altitude and the firmness, but there's a lot of opportunity to get yourself in trouble at this golf course with the high degree of penalties. And that is how you really get yourself out of a tournament here, is if you put it in the water or put it behind a cactus bush. So yeah, guys who drive it really good tend to do well here. Makes a lot of sense with a guy like Scotty Scheffler has won here the last 2 years. Makes a lot of sense that Brooks Koepka, one of the best drivers in the world, he's won here twice. Even Webb Simpson, though, he's a shorter hitter, but he hits a lot of fairways, stayed out of trouble for the most part. He won here. So, it's no surprise that I think Murfield Village is, well, maybe not. Bay Hill, actually. Bay Hill is actually one of the higher correlated golf courses to this place as far as skill sets needed and they're predicted to do well, because again, like at Bay Hill, yeah, we think about Bryson doing well. We think about Scotty Scheffler, who's won there, by the way, a little bit of crossover there. We think about a lot of Rory. We think about guys who are bombers, but there's a lot of guys who are fairly accurate to do very well at Bay Hill. And it's all because just avoiding trouble there with all the water hazards there. No surprise that based on the driving here, it's very similar to that golf course. About PGA Tour average as far as approach play, this is going to be their most predictive skill set anyways, your iron play heading in. A little less predictive with around the green, and then putting, though. Better putters generally do a little better here than most PGA Tour venues, I think, because of how well and true these greens roll for the most part at TPC Scottsdale. Let's get to what actually separates you in tournament, though, at Scottsdale. So this is different. I always like looking at this box here. And for me personally, I love seeing correlated skill sets with what's predictive versus how you separate yourself. And the big theme at this place is more than the average PGA Tour venue. If you're driving it really well here, you're going to be able to separate yourself more from everybody else in the field. And that's indicative based on this black point right here. This is the PGA Tour average, this green is what it was. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the numbers actually mean. I just know what it indicates. Typically, the better you drove it in tournament, the better chance of success you had here. And this is consistent basically almost every year. It was really evident back in 2021, again, when Scotty Scheffler won, or in 2022. In 2021 here, a little less, maybe because of the easier conditions. But in 2020, again, a little bit, if you drove it better that week, more than the average PGA Tour golf course, you're able to separate yourself and do a little better on the leaderboard that week. Approach play generally is a little discounted here. Can't really think of a good reason why. Maybe it's just because it's so heavily skewed towards your off the tee play that if you're in the fairway there, your approach shot isn't quite as difficult. Not as high as most PGA Tour venues as far as your ability to separate yourself on the leaderboard with your irons, at least in 2023. 2022, again, the same thing. a little less than the PGA Tour average. 2021, same thing. It's still one of the most important metrics to basically separate yourself here is through your iron play. It's not quite as impactful as everywhere else there. Around the green, again, with some of the difficult conditions, guys are able to navigate the greens a little better. Last year, did better overall. I think maybe the lower green and regulation rates had something to do with that. Back in 2022, again, same thing. Maybe the tough, lies around the green, tough bunkers. It is fairly difficult conditions. Again, another theme as well in 2021. It's still not the most important metric or way to win a tournament or do well here, but it's a little more important in tournament to do it better than some other venues we've seen. One thing I also want to go back to off the tee as well. So while distance, I've made this point, I think, in a couple of previews before, but when it comes to off the tee, in order to be, from a predictive standpoint, as far as how guys are going to do driving that week, distance is more predictive because the ability to hit fairways is pretty random. You could be just a little bit offline and you're missing a lot of fairways that day, or you could just be hitting it, driving it really good, and you make a lot of fairways. It's kind of similar to putting, but round to round, how you do that day in relation to the field off the tee is way more driven by how many fairways you hit, which makes sense because there is an inherent penalty to not hitting fairways if you hit fairways that day. So what happened last year, though, was it definitely favored guys. Basically, your in-tournament strokes gained off the tee metric was way more driven by distance last year than accuracy. And I think that's probably because of maybe the less penal rough that they had. It was a little less. There's really no difference between hitting the rough and hitting from the fairway at that point. It's not quite the same as prior years. In 2022, the amount of fairways you hit, way disproportionately, had a better effect on your strokes gained off the tee numbers than it was distance. In 2021, it was kind of less. Basically, that year off the tee didn't really matter as much, but accuracy was a lot more important than distance. I think it's going to be interesting to watch and see if they have the same tournament conditions that they have this year. If this is going to be the same thing. Also, because it's colder, guys aren't going to be able to carry as far. Maybe the fairways are playing a little softer. Maybe I expect longer guys to have more of an edge again this year. That might be something I maybe look a little more towards. Maybe it plays out very similar to what it was in 2023. And then it was putting again. I think because maybe it's very easy to putt on these greens. Harder to separate yourself around the green or on the greens here last year with the type of overseed they had. Same thing in 2022. It was a little harder to separate yourself on the greens in tournament. I think, in general, you want to target guys who are pretty good putters. That tends to have more of a success, at least before a tournament when you're picking. In tournament, though, it's not as impactful towards your overall strokes gain, separating yourself on the leaderboard. And then let's talk about a pro shot distribution chart last year. So last week at Pebble Beach, we talked about wedge play. Huge disproportionate numbers of shots from under 125 and 150 yards than the average PGA Tour golf course. Complete opposite this week. Not a ton under 150 yards at this golf course, at least from 75 to 150. It's less than the PGA Tour average. You have about the PGA Tour average from 50 to 75 yards, but it's only 3%. That's one shot. I think that's probably either if you lay up on the par 5 15th, or it might be maybe a 50-yard shot, maybe on 17. But a huge disproportionate amount between 150 and 200 last year. In 2022, it was a little more evenly distributed. I can't think of exactly why, but still a higher amount between 150 and 175. This one in 2021 definitely got a little more normalized. Slightly higher from 125 to 150, but way more between 150 and 200 here. So going back to last year, about 45% of your shots between 150 and 200. There's a lot less shots between 200 or over 200 from this tournament as well. And again, I would expect with the colder conditions, maybe a lot of rain coming in before the tournament, soften up the fairways a bit. Balls aren't going to carry as far. Ball might not roll as far. I think this might play a little farther. I think, maybe some proximity buckets shift a little more. But I would definitely focus this week on between your performance between 150 and 200. That seems to be, the highest concentration year to year of the types of approach shots you want to look at for your either if you're still using proximity or if you're on DataGolf, you're using the strokes gained per shot metric that I use. That's the range to focus on. We also have some pre-tournament odds available for the Phoenix Open. I don't have any bets down. I know a lot of people do. I just didn't really see an appetite to try. I think actually I looked at the odds, and yes, they've been offering it for 6 months, but I just didn't see any value. I didn't know who's going to exactly be in the field, but Scotty Scheffler plus 350 this week. I think when I got him a couple years ago, I think he was 25-1. Last year, I think he was 12-1. Not as good of a field. He's 2-time defending champion. They don't want you betting Scotty this week. He's plus 350. Xander's 10-1. Hovland's 11-1. JT's 11-1. This is just one book, but Homa's 12-1. And then it goes down to a couple guys between 20 and 30. Spieth, Sungjae, Burns, Poston's 25-1. Wyndham Clark, maybe he can carry some momentum from last week. He's 28-1. Minwoo Lee, who bombs it everywhere. I'm sure he's going to be a popular pick, 30-1. And then you got, basically guys smushed between, 40, 50-1. Your Tom Kims, your Matt Fitzpatrick's, Hideki's a 2-time winner here. Your Eric Coles, who's my producer, is going to just bet again because he just has severe FOMO. You might be able to find some value between 40 and 61, but otherwise, though, if you're looking at top of the board, if you're hoping to get, maybe a discount on some of the top names, you're basically looking at a single bullet here. Probably down the board, a name that caught my eye, Akshay 100-1. He's been playing really good this year. Obviously at Kapalua, he had a 54-hole lead. He played pretty well at Torrey a couple weeks ago. I don't know exactly how he's going to do on these overseeded greens. I know he typically putts pretty well in POA, but he's hitting the ball pretty good. He's a longer hitter. He's a good driver. That can maybe work. Other than that, though, I'll have to take a look. I'll have to dive into the data. But that's where the odds are right now. Obviously, we will have let's get rid of this. We will have, it's actually a very jam-packed week for us on the Golf Gambling Podcast. Tomorrow, we will have our DFS show with Matt Gannon. Tuesday, we will have our Waste Management Phoenix Open betting show with Jeff Feinberg coming in. I know we're very excited to have him on the show. I know he's made a bunch of bets already. I'm going to try and get him to clear the board and try and maybe help you guys out if you have made a bet what he would actually do today. And then we also have another live event, Live Las Vegas. I have broken down the golf course. I have charted out. I'm going to be completely real with you guys. Not a strong offering with where Live is going. I would probably describe it as a worse version of TPC Summerlin, which is not a compliment. And then we will have that show actually directly after our betting show on Tuesday. We'll live stream the podcast will get released on Wednesday. And then Thursday, our last NFL show of the year that we were giving to you guys as bonus content to keep listening to us. We will have our Super Bowl props show on Thursday. We will go over our official pick for the game. We will go over any game props, player props, any novelty props. I know I showed a bunch of novelty props like the anthem or Taylor Swift stuff to my wife. She is eager to get off her official pick. A couple years ago, she was absolutely adamant that Mary J. Blige was going to wear hoops earrings during the halftime show. And I laid a pretty big bet. I think at like plus 180, and that hits. So she's riding hot with this stuff. She knows her stuff. So it's very important to listen to what my wife is probably going to want to bet for the halftime show or the anthem. So stay tuned for that. But thank you for joining me on this Sunday morning. I always appreciate it. You guys showing up and with the comments here. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple or Spotify. It really helps us out. Give us a rate and review as well. It doesn't have to be 5 stars. Give us any rating. We love to hear feedback from you. Hopefully it's 5 stars. Hopefully you enjoy everything we put out. And also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. This is all free that we're giving you. We work hard at this stuff. So go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll have all our anything in podcast form, in video form as well. Especially helpful for this preview. So go subscribe there, subscribe to our podcast, subscribe on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, if you're sweating bets for Pebble Beach, you'll have to swim tomorrow. If you're sweating bets for Live, good luck with that. And with that, we will see you on Tuesday night.